Hello, and welcome back for Season 3, Episode 12 of Uncanny Oddities from around the world. Tonight, we will be talking about the Mandela effect, CERN, the boson Higgs particle, and everything else that relates to CERN, including a few conspiracy theories. We already have James, our good friend Old 8 Gauge, here in the chat tonight. Good to see you. Good to see you. So, first, I guess we should talk about, what is CERN, essentially. Well, it is, long story short, not to get too technical here, but long story short, they basically invented this thing called a Large Hadron Collider. And what it does is it takes particles and it basically, like an electron and a proton and neutrons, particles. And what it does is it shoots them really high speeds in the circular device, and they crash into each other. And when they do, when they crash into each other, it releases massive amounts of energy, because what they're trying to do is they are basically trying to figure out what was the Big Bang, what caused the Big Bang. Why did that happen? And unfortunately, I think they're trying to recreate it, but maybe on a smaller scale, on a much smaller scale. But they're trying to essentially figure out exactly how to recreate the Big Bang. And through some of their research, they discovered something called the boson Higgs particle, which some people refer to as the God particle, because it is even smaller than, neutrons, electrons, protons. It's even smaller than the atom, which we previously considered the building block of life. So the boson Higgs particle is very important in terms of science and CERN. And that's kind of what they're trying to do, is by shoving all these particles together at high speeds, they're trying to study that energy and see if they can find new particles that have never been produced before. James said, God said, let there be light. There is the Big Bang. And that is what some people believe. And I believe that there are certain ways that science and religion can coexist without fighting each other, because there are certain areas where, when you study science deeply enough, it kind of supports some of the theories, passed through religion, and vice versa. Some of the stories that I've heard about religion seem to support what is known as scientific facts in certain geographical locations. And I'll just leave it at that. Do with that as you will. Now, now that we know a little bit more about CERN, let's get into the actual topic I wanted to initially discuss tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I found an article the other day, and it was pretty interesting to me, so I wanted to share it with everybody. So here's what it is. CERN succeeds in transporting antimatter. Yep, you read that right. Antimatter. So that sounds a little dangerous to me. Like, if something were to happen and that truck got into an accident, it could be like a nuke going off. It could, like, explode the world. I don't know. But it definitely sounds dangerous. So let's see what it says. The experiment successfully transported a trap filled with antiprotons across CERN's main site, a remarkable first step towards delivering antimatter to other European laboratories. Now, I wanted to share the website. This is the official CERN Accelerating Science website, which is home.cern, and then, there's news, press release, but you can figure all that out. Just go to CERN and search base experiment at CERN. Succeeds in transporting antimatter, and you'll be able to pull this up. But anyways, let's get back to it. So today, in a world first, a team of scientists from the BASE experiment at CERN successfully transported a trap filled with antiprotons in a truck across the laboratory's main site. The team managed to accumulate a cloud of 92 antiprotons in an innovative portable cryogenic pinning trap, then disconnect it from the experimental facility, load it onto a truck, and continue experiment operation after transport. This is a remarkable achievement given that antimatter is very difficult to preserve as it annihilates upon contact with matter. See? It annihilates upon contact with matter. Yeah, I told you this was dangerous. I told you this was going to be dangerous. We should not be messing with this stuff. Sorry. So, this world premiere is a test, the ultimate aim being to transport antiprotons to other European laboratories, such as Heinrich Heine University in Dusseldorf, HHU, where very high precision measurements of the antiproton properties could be performed. So, antimatter is a naturally occurring class of particles that is almost identical to ordinary matter, except that the electric charge and magnetic moment are reversed. According to the laws of physics, the Big Bang should have produced equal amounts of matter and antimatter. Sorry. These equal but opposite particles would have quickly annihilated each other, leaving the empty universe. However, our universe contains predominantly matter, and this imbalance has baffled scientists for decades. Now, to support James's claim of God or a supreme being of some sort, if there was a God that was creating things, and science, as I suggested earlier, there are some ways that science can relate. Yes, it is a reference to Ghostbusters, James. Sorry, I just saw your comment. Yes, it is a reference to Ghostbusters. Thank you. But there are some ways that science can actually support this idea, because what this says right here is that there is more matter in the universe than there is antimatter, which would not make sense if the Big Bang had produced equal amounts. However, because it contains predominantly matter, if God was creating things and science says anything that has mass and takes up space quantifies as matter, and science says matter can be neither created nor destroyed. So, if science believes that matter can be neither created nor destroyed, then there is only one being that could defy the laws of science, and that would be God, right? Just, trying to play both sides here. And science is very interesting because even in science, the boson Higgs particle, they call it the God particle. So, I've always thought that was interesting as well. So, let's continue reading. So, physicists suspect that there are hidden differences that may explain why matter survived and antimatter all but disappeared. To deepen our understanding of antimatter, the BASE collaboration aims to precisely measure the properties of antiprotons. So that's why they're trying to transport them to the other labs so they can study them in multiple locations, such as their intrinsic magnetic moment. Ooh, I wonder if they're trying to find monopoles. That's an interesting one. We don't have evidence of them technically, but it's a very interesting theory. Anyways, and then compare these measurements with those taken with protons. But they now face a problem. The machines and equipment in CERN's antimatter factory, where BASE is located, generate magnetic field fluctuations that limit how far we can push our precision measurements, explains Stefan Ulmer, a spokesperson of BASE. These fluctuations are minuscule, of the order of 1/1000th of a Tesla, 20,000 times smaller than the magnetic field of the Earth. So these are like on a quantum level. like tiny, like Ant-Man, like the Ant-Man movie where they went down and got all small. That'd be like this. This is where they would be at in this understanding. And undetectable outside of the building. However, the precision of the measurements taken in base is such that gaining an even deeper understanding of the fundamental properties of antiprotons will require moving the experiment out of the building, says Stefan Ulmer. So I'm going to go ahead and stop reading it here. I think we, basically get the idea. They're transporting antimatter is a pioneering and ambitious project, and I congratulate the base collaboration on this impressive milestone. We are at the beginning of an exciting scientific journey that will allow us to further deepen our understanding of antimatter, says the CERN Director for Research and Computing, Gauthier Hamel de Moquinalat. I apologize. I'm sure I butchered your name. I will try it one more time. Gauthier Hamel de Montenolt. I hope I did better that time. I apologize. So we're going to go ahead and close that. So basically, what they're doing is they finally found a way to transport antimatter so they can study it in more locations because they believe it has something to do with the Big Bang, which, as I said on yesterday's show, I personally wonder if the Big Bang is the end of the universe and the beginning of the universe. I am the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega, that kind of ideal. And, like we said, if time is not real, it doesn't exist, and it's not fluid, and it is fluid, but unreal. It's kind of complicated. But if that's all true, then that would mean the end and the beginning could potentially exist at the same time, quote unquote. So I always thought that was pretty interesting. And then for the other segment that we're going to be doing tonight, I wanted to talk once again about the Mandela effect. Now, let's do a little funny thing here. Let's do some fun stuff, okay? I went to Reddit and I found a really fun a really fun little theory here. So it says why many think CERN is responsible for the Mandela effect. Now I think this one's a little silly, so that's I'm sharing this one. Not trying to make fun of this person. I apologize, but I thought this was an interesting way of looking at things. Let's put it that way. So they shared a video to a YouTube page at CERN, but it has some music in it, and I didn't want to get us in trouble, so I'm not going to be sharing that video. But if you wanted to go look it up on your own, it is called We Are Happy at CERN. It is on their official channel, US LHC, and was made in 2014 through 2015 when most of the major Emmys hit the scene. Now, here's what this person on Reddit is writing. They say at the 2-minute and 31-second mark, after some Shiva dancing, after some Shiva is dancing, like the goddess, okay? It says an animation of a simulation showing some particles escaping the collision chamber and a demonstration of how they can measure the Higgs field with two ladies dancing in front of some kind of screen. So before we go any further, demonstration of how they can measure the Higgs field and a simulation showing some particles escaping the collision chamber. That's the part that stood out to me. Now that part I do find interesting. Regardless of the, dancing Shiva ladies and, all that stuff, however you want to, interpret that. This part right here did really stand out to me because it says something about particles escaping the collision chamber. So it sounds to me like that would be a very big alert. That would be some sort of very big deal or some very big issue if something that powerful was escaping the chamber and it could definitely cause some, dangerous stuff to start happening in the space-time continuum. Yeah, sounding like a science fiction movie now, aren't we? But anyways, um, and then it says there's a scientist with long gray hair and a beard with a black shirt with some kind of equation on it, and he's sitting in a room with at least 85,000 pieces of paper. I don't know how they know it's 85,000 pieces of paper. I guess they counted it. No, I think they probably just made up some, random, very large number, if not way more, stacked up in piles all around him in his office. The printer right behind him has been very busy, to say the least. He is wearing a cryptic set of signs he fashioned with white and orange pieces of construction paper and some string. The sign on top says Bond Number 1, who was played by Barry Nelson. Barry Nelson. While the sign below that says Mandella. When you put these together, you come up with Barry Nelson Mandela or Bury Nelson Mandela. This is them just laughing at us and almost blatantly saying they know about or have caused the Mandela effect phenomenon, which is real. And I'm just going to stop it there because I'm just going to. But if anyone is interested to try to find this on their own, it is on the Mandela Effect Reddit. It looks like the official Mandela Effect Reddit, if I'm understand. Yeah. And the user who uploaded this was Germanon-Rex. So I just thought that was an interesting little theory that I would share with everybody. Now, getting back to the Mandela effect. What is the Mandela effect? For the 3 people that still don't know. The phenomenon was named by paranormal researcher Fiona Broome, Broome. She wrongly recalled Nelson Mandela dying in the 1980s. She said that she could remember news coverage of his funeral, even though he later became the president of South Africa and passed away in 2013. After she found others who misremembered the same thing, she began studying the phenomena of collective false memory. Thus, the Mandela effect was born. Now, let's stop there for a second. I understand what people say, that you're just having a false memory. You think back and the human mind is fuzzy. It can make things up or it can misremember stuff. Okay, I can accept that. I can. But you know what I can't accept? And it's your very argument that makes it impossible to accept. Your very argument is so paradoxical when you think about how it relates to the Mandela effect, because your entire argument sits on the sake of humans having a poor memory, a bad memory, or a false memory. Okay? But here's the thing. If your brain was truly creating a false memory that never happened, then can anyone care to explain to me how thousands or hundreds of thousands of people could have the exact same false memory in the exact same way at the exact same time about the exact same thing? That just doesn't click for me. There's something more to it. James is getting tired. Thank you for coming to hang out with us, James. We will see you next time. I'm just kind of ranting away on this episode, seeing how, seeing where we can go with it. But thank you for coming to hang out, and I will definitely see you next time, James. Have a good night. So that's what I'm getting at, though, with the Mandela effect is it's just too convenient. How could that many people misremember the exact same thing in the exact same way if it was completely false? Because if it was a completely false memory, how could even two people remember it the exact same way? Because no two people have the exact same brain. So, one person over here, they might have a memory of a kitty cat, like a kitten, flying an airplane into a building. And this person over here might have a memory of a dog flying an airplane into a building. And in reality, there was no building, there was no airplane. But they didn't have the same false memory. There were different details. This one was a cat, this one was a dog, for example, whatever. And that's what I find so interesting about it, is that they insist that it's a false memory, but I can't understand how they can argue that people have bad memories or false memories, but hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of people have the same false memory. That's the part that doesn't sit right with me. I could even accept that they have false memories, but in my mind, even if that was the answer, they would all have different false memories. They wouldn't have the same false memory. And here's another one, because this is actually one of the most popular ones, is the one with Darth Vader. Come on, you all know Darth Vader, right? Luke, I am your father. But did he really say that? Because here's what they say is he says, however, it's another line that was never said. He says, "No, I am your father," is what they say is the correct line in the movie. But how many of you have ever seen Star Wars? I mean, oh, we got a new comment. Jesse says, "Mind is not local, thoughts have no mass. If gravity is a polar force, then mass, or matter, only has longitudinal effect." I like that. That's very interesting. It almost, if I understand it correctly, it almost sounds like you're suggesting that our thoughts are kind of just floating around out here and they get, you know, all carried around by gravity. That's an interesting thing to think about. I like it. Now, the Star Wars one is very interesting to me in particular because it involves an actor. And we're not just talking like an amateur actor. We're talking like, big actors here, famous actors who have been doing this for, a very long periods of time. And look, I'm not a professional. I'm not claiming to be a professional. I just like to have fun with it. But I was I was in a few high school plays, and we spent like 3 or 4 months, if not longer, memorizing those lines and studying those lines. So as someone who, just an amateur who did a little bit of acting in high school during, 4 years of acting and theater classes in high school, like even just as an amateur, I find it very, very difficult to believe that the actor would misquote or misremember their own line, especially a professional actor who's been doing this for a long time and who constantly interacts with fans who most likely reference that very exact line that everyone claims he is misremembering, because even the actor himself says that he remembers it being, "Luke, I am your father." He even says that himself. So there's just some very interesting, paradoxical issues going on with some of this stuff. It all started with Nelson Mandela's death, as we, briefly mentioned earlier. Now, here's another one. Oh, Shaggy's Adam's apple. That's a tongue twister. Shaggy's Adam's apple. Okay, this is a good one. So this one says, "Do you remember Shaggy from Scooby Doo with a big Adam's apple? Maybe as he inhales a giant sandwich, or when he gets scared. When he got scared, I remember. Yeah, I remember the Adam's apple. So do tons of others, but in reality, it's nowhere to be seen." Let me go ahead and share this page with everybody. So share the screen. So here's what I'm looking at now. Here it is. So look, no Adam's apple. I remember an Adam's apple, though. I remember that myself. Mickey Mouse's suspenders. Quick, how does Mickey Mouse hold up his pants? Answer, not with suspenders, even if you could swear you remember him wearing them. I swear, I remember Mickey Mouse wearing suspenders. But to be fair, I wasn't alive during that time. So my only reference point is like, Kingdom Hearts is basically my only reference point completely, because I did the timeless, if you played Kingdom Hearts in Kingdom Hearts 2, they had the timeless river uh world. It was literally this exact Mickey Mouse right here. But I think the TV show originally aired in, I think, the 50s, maybe, or might have even been the 40s. As you can tell, it was still back when TV was in black and white. Now, here's the next one. "Fly, my pretties, fly!" When the Wicked Witch sends her flying monkeys after Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, many remember her shouting, "Fly, my pretties, fly!" and cackling. But in the movie, she actually shouts, "Fly, fly, fly!" Yeah, I definitely remember her saying "my pretties." I remember that too. I'm pretty sure about that one, because we had to watch The Wizard of Oz in high school many times, because they always insisted on arguing about everything and all the symbolism behind it. And I was a kid back then, and I was just like, maybe there was no symbolism. Maybe the man just wanted to write an entertaining adventure book. Jeez, leave the man alone. And then we got Captain Crunch versus Captain Crunch. How do you spell the peanut butter flavored cereal with the pirate on the front? That's right, it's Captain, not Captain Crunch. However you spell it, we know one thing for sure, it's delicious. Now, I remember having a Captain Crunch video game on the computer when I was a kid. So I feel like I have a pretty good idea of Captain Crunch. And I remember it being Captain Crunch. I've also got a personal Mandela effect that I have yet to find anyone else that has this one. So I'm going to mention it again because I am obsessed with trying to figure this out. And no, I refuse to accept it's on In Living Color. That is not a good enough explanation for me. Because here's my own Mandela effect. There was a skit with Jim Carrey. Yep, we're going there. Not the clone, the original Jim Carrey. The one who actually, had, a soul. Um, the original Jim Carrey used to have this skit called Fire Marshal Bill. And I swear I have very vivid memories of that skit with Fire Marshal Bill, and he always had the messed up hair by the time it was over, and he was like, and he was, and I loved it. It was great. It was one of my favorite skits, and as I've grown up, as I've been an adult, I've found myself talking about that skit countless times, and every time I talk about it, every single person tells me, "Oh, that was on In Living Color. I love that show." And the first time it was my mom, and she was like, "Oh, that was on In Living Color." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She was like, "In Living Color." I was like, I've never heard of that. What is that?" And she's like, "It's a TV show. I think it had Will Smith on it, maybe, or something like that. I don't even really remember, but she told me that it was a TV show, like a sketch comedy show, and I was like, "No, Fire Marshal Bill was on Mad TV." Because I remembered it, and I was like, "No, it was Mad TV." I even remember because when it would pan away from Fire Marshal Bill, it would pan over to the little chair with the TV on it that said Mad TV because that was their thing, and I remember watching it every week. And I remember like multiple Fire Marshal Bill skits. And this was like a long time ago, like before YouTube existed a long time ago. Like I was a little kid. And I was like, I remember all that. And like it's insane to me. Like it's actually crazy to me because I have such vivid memories of that. And then people actually show me clips of Fire Marshal Bill, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's the show I was talking about. That's exactly what I was talking about." And then they show me, the In Living Color, the intro, and other skits from In Living Color, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, what is this? I've never seen this." And I have absolutely no memory of the opening of In Living Color. I have absolutely no memory of any other skit on the entire show, but somehow people insist that Fire Marshal Bill was on In Living Color, and they even have the video evidence to prove it. So, what else can I say? That's my own personal Mandela effect. Jesse says emotion modifies temporal binding. Null emotional states are unbound to material stressors. The manipulation en masse of a population engenders basically altered memory status. That's interesting. So, if I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. Humans are infinitely hackable. Yuval Noval Harari. Humans have been hacked. Check Gateway Kids, MK Ultra, Buddhism for the Mechanism, Scale to AAA Games, mobile phones, mass formation psychosis. Yes, that actually makes a lot of sense. I've heard about that, and I've studied psychology for years, so I know how. And I've, not to get, I've seen some of the stuff that's come out recently, and I'll just leave it at that. Um, but yes, I've studied psychology for literally decades at this point, and it is far easier than anyone would realize to hack into people's brains and make them do exactly what you want. As everything you just mentioned has very well proven with MK Ultra and the Gateway Kids especially. I remember the Gateway Kids. Like that was the one where they did the sound testing, right? They told you it was to see if you were deaf, if you're here. They told you it was a hearing test, and they would play the sounds in each ear. They were like, "Raise your hand if you hear the sound, if you hear the beep." I remember that. They did that to me when I was a kid. And I've heard terrible stories about MK Ultra, and they would like dose people without their permission, without even telling them. Even people in like the CIA and the FBI themselves got dosed without knowing about it, like secretly. Buddhism for the Mechanism is interesting you mentioned that because I have been studying Buddhism for a couple of years now. I haven't really gone too awfully deep into it. I'm still kind of surface level, but I really enjoy the ego death aspect of Buddhism. I think that's very interesting. And the scale to AAA games because I think with that, my personal opinion on that is I think they're trying to use AAA games and Hollywood movies and popular TV shows to mass program people, as you said, mass formation psychosis and mobile phones with advertisements and the lights and everything else. I believe that you're right about that, and I believe they're trying to program people and make them have certain thoughts so that their thoughts go up into the world, interact with the hyperbits, and become reality because it is a form of dark psychology that they are conveniently aware of. Also, time is nonlinear. Thanks for playing. You do understand just fine. Just letting you know you're on the right track. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for that. I've been studying some very, let's say, spiritual and esoteric stuff for probably close to a year now. Since about May or June of last year, I stumbled across, let's call it a phantom teacher that really opened my eyes to some stuff. And before I lost access to their knowledge, they trained me very well and they taught me how to do some very, very deep research. And I'll just leave it at that. But I find all this stuff very interesting. And I'm glad that you're here with us, Jesse, because it's good to have more people to talk about this stuff with. Because a lot of people just, they take one look and they just accept what the mainstream says. And I believe it's very dangerous to accept. Sorry. And I believe it's very dangerous to just accept the surface level knowledge. I think it's very important that we dig a little bit deeper, whether we believe it or not, because even if we don't believe it, it can still just be an entertaining story, if nothing else, even if we don't believe it. So, next one is Snoopy's tail. What color is Snoopy's tail? Some will tell you it's black, but in reality, it's white with a small black spot on it. I think I remember it being black, but I also didn't watch enough Peanuts or Charlie Brown to really have that stick in my head. So I'm not too sure on this one myself. All right, Tony the Tiger's nose. He has a blue nose, not black. Many people remember the famous Frosted Flakes mascot with a black nose, probably because of the color of his stripes. Honestly, I remember him with both colors on his nose. Not at the same time, but like over the years. Like I feel like he used to have a black nose and then over time it changed to blue later on, but I never really thought of it as a Mandela effect. I just thought it was they changed how they did the advertising. But now they're saying that the black nose never existed at all. Okay, that's interesting. Sinbad never played a genie. I never watched Sinbad, so I don't know, and I never watched Shazam, so I really don't know anything about this other than what it says. But this one they claim is perhaps the most bizarre of all. Several people can attest that they distinctly remember seeing the comedian in a movie called Shazam. Many argue they're confusing this memory with the movie Kazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal as a genie, but who really knows? Not me, because I don't. I didn't really know Sinbad. Oops, I did it again. Headset. Another Mandela effect has to do with Britney Spears' famous music video. Many can distinctly remember Britney wearing a microphone headset in the video. Her doll was even sold with one. However, after rewatching it, it's clear she never wore it in the video. So how do we all have a clear image of this? It's likely because she is famous for performing live with a microphone headset and the two are merging in our minds. Personally, I remember her wearing the headset. I feel like I remember the headset from that one. And then we got Jif, not Jiffy. People swear there was a Jiffy peanut butter back in the day, but we speculate they're combining Jif with its competitor Skippy. Now, here, this one is a little complicated for me because while I don't remember the Jiffy peanut butter, I do remember a Jiffy Pop branded popcorn that you popped on the stove, but that's probably a completely different thing. But that's all I remember because I only remember Jif. I do remember that because I always talk about how he's like, it's pronounced guh, it's pronounced gif. Like the actual person who made this brand of peanut butter said it's supposed to be pronounced gif, and I'm like, well, buddy, that's just not how the English language works. And as many rules as we already break, I don't think it's a good idea to break anymore. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call it GIF. A GIF is an animated image. A GIF is a peanut butter. Okay? I've always argued about that with people. Now, it makes almost zero sense, but yes, the cartoon was spelled as Tunes, Tunes. No, not in my world it wasn't. In my world it was Looney Tunes because the whole point was to have the double O in Looney and the double O in Tunes because it looked really nice together. That was the whole point. No. Oh gosh, they're going to get to the Flintstones again, aren't they? They're going to get to the Flintstones here in a second. The Berenstein Bears didn't exist. Yes, they did, because that's the one I had when I was a kid. The Berenstain Bears is a Mandela effect, weird, no good, weird thing, because the lovable cartoon bear family actually spelled their last name with an A, the Berenstain Bears. No, they did not, because the whole point is Berenstein is supposed to be like a spoof because they're supposed to be German. That, like, I even remember that from when I was a kid. That's why I'm here. God bless you. You can translate that. I'm going now, just passing on a little love. Now you know, and I'll be off so your cough will clear up. Thank you very much, Jesse. I'm just about done here. When I get through these Mandela effects, I'm going to be ending it. I'm just going through tonight and doing some fun stuff because it's been a while since I looked into the Mandela effect, and it's a very, very interesting topic for me because I like to see which ones I have and which ones I don't. Because, no two people have the same Mandela effects, interestingly enough. Now, Curious George's tail was never there. Okay, I actually never remembered Curious George having a tail. So I'm cool with that one. Now we got Sex in the City. Oh no. This one might be inappropriate. Well, these four women, okay, we're trying to have a family show here. So the show was actually called Sex and the City. No, it was not. I remember that. I'm pretty confident about this one. I remember it being in the city. And Febreze with two E's. You might use this stuff every day, but be honest, you thought it was Febreze with two E's, didn't you? Yeah, I did, because it was. See, this is one of the ones I'm good at. The Mandela effect for Febreze. I definitely remember it being two E's because it was supposed to be like a breeze, like a wind flowing through the breeze. Oscar Mayer versus Oscar Mayer. Yeah, it was definitely Meyer. I remember that one too. One of the most confounding of all. There's an A in Mayer. Honest to goodness, we thought it was Meyer. I did too, guys. I also thought it was Meyer. Now, looks sketchy, less sketchy than most, but people have been befuddled to see that there's no T in Skechers. If there's no T in Skechers, then how do you get the SKE? Then how do you pronounce it? Sketch. Yeah, there's a T. Listen, Skechers. Yeah, I definitely remember a T in that one. And then we got Fruit Loops. Kellogg had been spelling fruit like that for years, and we only noticed it now. Wowza. No, I remember it being Fruit Loops, or UIT, because I used to eat that when I was a kid. King Henry's turkey leg. For some reason, people distinctly remember this portrait showing the King of England wielding a turkey leg. To be clear, he was not. Yeah, I remember that one too, because we talked about it in high school, I think. I don't remember it very well, but I do vaguely remember it specifically because I thought it was strange that they had a picture, uh, a painting of an old king with a turkey leg, and I thought it was just supposed to be like showing his symbol of power because he could eat and all this stuff and whatever. But you know, I don't get it. I really don't. I do not get it. But I don't hate it. I kind of like it. It's very interesting to me, you know? Um, let's keep going. Let's find the next one. All right? Let's find the next one. All right. So next is the Monopoly Man and his monocle. Oh, we got quite a few left actually. We're only about halfway through. So I think I'll probably end it before we get through the end. I don't know. We'll see how we feel. I don't want to drag it on too long, but you know, the 15-minute episodes, they weren't doing too well, so I wanted to try to make this one a little bit longer, see if people enjoyed it a little bit more. Um, so his monocle, or the fact that he doesn't have one. This, as some suggest, might be a simple confusion between him and the Planters Peanut Company mascot, Mr. Peanut. No, I definitely remember him with a monocle because it was a whole joke about how it became like a whole meme for my generation, how there was like this monocle thing, you know, and it's like rich people had monocles specifically because of Mr. Monopoly. Now, Pikachu's tail, though many of us clearly remember the black detailing on the Pokemon character's tail, in reality is just yellow. Nope, I remember the end being black as well because it matched his ears. That was the whole reason they had the end of the tail is black, was specifically because it matched his ears. The hyphen in Kit Kat, crisp wafers. Yeah, there's definitely a hyphen in Kit Kat. There's no There was definitely a hyphen in Kit Kat before. There's not now, but there definitely was before. And the cornucopia and Fruit of the Loom, that's a common one. And I definitely remember it with the cornucopia because that was literally how I learned what a cornucopia was. Literally. And Cheez-Its with the Z on the it's. Yeah, I remember that one too with the extra Z. But no, it's not that. Man, I have a lot of these Mandela effects. Interesting. Double stuff Oreos. If you're trying to tell us there isn't a second F in stuff, our lives have officially been a lie. I'm not too sure about that one, to be honest. Mona Lisa's smile. There are a lot of theories about this one, but so many people have claimed that she used to have a more obvious smile. Yeah, I remember that. I think I remember that. Not positive though. I'm not confident on that one, but yeah, I seem to think I remember that. I think I remember that. Even the big C3PO has a silver leg. No, he doesn't. Even the biggest Star Wars fans in Halloween costumes got it wrong. The robot isn't all gold. He has one silver piece on his right leg. Not true. No, that just looks weird. No. I knew they were going to get to the Flintstones eventually. It has two T's. Let's see. We've been pronouncing it without that first one, so this is really awkward now. That is a lie. That is not true. Because it was Flintstones, because that's how it was pronounced. Like, yes, I know what you're saying with Flintstones, but no, it was Flintstones because I don't know how else to say it. That's just how it was pronounced. Luke, I am your father. We did that one earlier. Cinderella's Castle. Contrary to popular belief, there's only one Cinderella Castle, and it is in Walt Disney World in Florida. The blue and pink castle in California's Disneyland is Sleeping Beauty's. I have no idea about that one. I don't even know. We're going to need a bigger boat. You're going to need a bigger boat, is what is said by Roy Schneider's character in Jaws, one of the best movies ever. Okay, I never actually watched Jaws. Bite me. So I don't really have a reference point for this one, other than what I've heard other people say, which other people have always said we're going to need a bigger boat. That's what other people have always told me, but I've never watched it myself, so I'm just, yeah. Now, Ed McMahon and Publishers Clearinghouse. We can see it clear as day, Ed McMahon handing families everywhere giant checks, but really McMahon was never a spokesperson for the company. Instead, he worked for American Family Publishers, but he never handed anyone checks. His face was simply on the envelopes. Nope, I remember him handing people checks because that was a big part of my childhood because I would always watch the commercial and I thought it was so silly that a man would just show up and hand you a really large check with a really large sum of money on it like that. Life is like a box of chocolates is not what Forrest Gump, played by the amazing Tom Hanks, actually said. If you listen closely, he says, life was like a box of chocolates. We're regretting all those Instagram captions right about now because we're in the wrong universe. We're in the wrong universe, people. I've never even seen the movie, and I know he says life is like a box of chocolates because that's the thing everyone always quotes. And even in the clips you see, that's the one clip you always see. Chartreuse. Do you recall someone telling you that chartreuse is a magenta pink color? So many others agree with you, but in reality, it's a shade of green. Okay, whatever. Run, you fools! Hate to burst your bubble again, but this memorable line was never said by Gandalf. Before his treacherous fall, you can clearly hear him saying, Fly, you fools! No, no, no. I love Lord of the Rings, and I definitely remember him saying, Run, you fools. Definitely remember that. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Nope, that wasn't the line in Snow White either. In fact, the Wicked Queen says, Magic mirror on the wall. Yep, our child has been ruined too. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. That is good enough for tonight. Look over here. Look, it's going a lot. Let's go ahead and get through them a little bit faster. I'm not gonna read all the details, but we'll see a little bit of the world. We're just kind of scroll through some of these. Mr. Rogers' theme song, "It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood." But even the movie makers got it wrong. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. Nope, I remember it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I definitely remember that. Beam me up, Scotty. Another memorable line. Captain Kirk, Star Trek. Wrong. Shatner never said those exact words, but the closest he got was Scotty beam us up. Nope, I definitely remember beam me up. I never even watched that show, and I know that. Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. Tom Cruise's sunglasses. Hello, Clarice. Oh, this one. I love this one because I have this one really, really bad. Lucy, you have some splaining to do. Ricky Ricardo's famous catchphrase on I Love Lucy was actually never said. What he really said was, "Splain that if you can," and Lucy, explain that. No, that is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And I think that's a good one to end on. So thank you all for coming to hang out with me tonight, and I will see you next time. Let's go ahead and I think we're actually going to do an outro tonight. So let's do the normal countdown over here. All right. I will see you all tonight. Sorry. I'll see you all next week. Thank you.